Betty, can you hear us? You want to just message?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's little busy in the sense some echo is there.
Sorry?
Some echo is there.
Now we are trying to set the audio here. Can you talk
Yeah, now it
again?
is better. Now it is better.
Which speaker is working?
Those speakers off, right?
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you please say something about it?
Yeah, what do you want me to say?
Right, okay, good. No, we're just checking the audio, see whether we can hear you guys clearly.
Yeah, can you hear me clearly?
You can hear us, right? You can
Yes,
hear us
yes,
clearly. Okay, good.
yes, I can.
Yeah.
Testing. You're testing. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you, Betty. How are you doing?
Okay,
Good afternoon.
okay.
Good
I'm
morning.
fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Nice to see you too.
Yes, yes. It's always a
Okay.
pleasure.
Yeah. So get ready, please. Get more lights.
Betty, can you say something from your end, please?
Hello, hello.
Betty, hi.
Hi. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Is your mic volume on max, Betty? Yeah, very good.
You do you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you. Okay, yeah. So it looks like the audio both sides, it works both ways. You can hear us clear enough, right, Betty?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good.
And do you hear me well?
Sorry, say it
Can you
again.
hear me?
Yes, yes, we can, yes.
Okay, okay.
We're balancing the sounds from this end. You want this? Amal, Betty, will you able to quickly see the slides or you're okay? So Nadiya will be sharing the slides from this end.
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah.
Okay, it's just one slideshow, so everything is one place basically. Yeah. You can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It barely got time to look at any of these details. I had back-to-back 2 classes today.
Yes. No.
No, I only see the slides now.
Yeah, so you want to see that? So once it's done, we start. Like you know, presentation.
Hi, Kyoko. Good afternoon. Good evening, rather.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it's getting dark.
Yeah.
What you want going to bed?
So, are you still in your office or?
No. I'm at home. Yeah, it's already outside the office hour.
Can you hear us? Kyoko, can you say something please from your end? You hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but then it's a little bit, what's it? Halloween?
Okay, so there's a bit of feedback, is it?
Now it's better.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's now better, bit better.
We are trying to switch off all the other mics. Hopefully it's a bit clearer now.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still not very clear actually. It's still Halloween.
Yeah.
No? Kyoko, is this any better? A little bit better?
A little bit better, yeah, a little bit better.
Okay, so we try to hold the mic as close to us as possible. Yeah, maybe that's the trick.
No, it still breaks, no?
The breaking up voices that there is like a feedback.
It kind of half echoes. So
Echoes,
that's
yeah.
why it's not very clear. But maybe if you speak close and then slowly and then maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Hi, Kyoko. We're going to try something else. Can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, this is better. This
Okay, we'll do this.
yeah, that is better.
Yes, because my
No, my speaker is off.
this was on. Make off window.
Hi, Kyoko. So sorry. Is this better?
Can you say again?
Is it better? Is this audio
Yeah,
better?
this is better. Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Betty. Can you say something now, please?
Hello.
Anything?
Do you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, now it's nice.
Okay, then that's fine.
It's
We are
okay
good
for
to
you
go.
also, right?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Excellent. All right. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Prabhakar. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, nice and clear. Is it echoing for you or are clear?
That's clear. There is no echo.
Okay. All right. Guys, these ones, right? So, yeah. Now, the only thing is when they, yeah, so the loudspeaker. Yeah, all good.
No, so I can check on it.
It's not switch it off. Joining us online. We're talking about that and the few panelists. So the title of this event is we are posing this question. And then what we are trying to do is to create a discussion the an in-person audience here, almost remember, but also then linking up with a few of our colleagues who we've been working for a few years now. So let me go straight into what we plan to do today. So a little bit of background as to where we are coming from, basically. Because we sort of started looking at the blue economy through a wider project that we've been working on. Can online participants hear us? Can someone please unmute and let us know? Can you hear us?
Kyoko? Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
so
better.
Sorry, give us, okay. Hopefully now it's clear to you as well. I think maybe we have to. Kyoko, is it better now?
Yes, it is. It's good.
Okay, all right. Sorry, let me backtrack a little bit then. So the title of today's event is The Promise of the Blue Economy is for whom? So we're actually posing this question. And I want to give a little bit of background as to how we got interested in this topic. So we are a group of academics, researchers, and activists working on a collaborative project for about 3 years now. The project is funded by the Social Science Research Council of the US. And this is the title of the project. So this is, not all of us are on this picture. There are a few of us who are missing, including actually my colleague Nadiya, who's here. So we represent 4 countries that are case-focused countries, but we also have some colleagues from the US, from Canada, the Netherlands, who've been working with us, as I said, for the last 3 years or so. And I just want to go back to this title. So as you can see, rupture was one of the critical concepts for us. So, and when we say rupture here, we meant changes that was sort of sudden that took place. And these changes could be economic, they could be financial, they could be ecological, could be related to climate change. So we looked at ruptures or changes from a bit of a broad angle. And our geographic focus was the Indian Ocean. And our point of departure was, let me get rid of all this. Sorry. We were interested in environmental stress. So this could be climate change, these are some of the examples, but also like man-made sort of disasters or, human action like pollution, coastal erosion, and aggression, overfishing. And we were also interested in political economic pressure. And these included things like intersectoral competition. So for example, we were interested in understanding how tourism, aquaculture, things like large port development came together in a given geographic space, in a sense, and created tensions or sort of resulted in shrinking of spaces. and I will come back to this concept of, all of us will actually come back to this concept of shrinking spaces a little bit later. But we were very much interested from the beginning on what I called ruptures or change, but also how these changes then contributed or interacted with space. And space from a very broad perspective again, right? So it's not only geographic or physical space, it was space from a broad angle. We were also interested in changing institutions for resource appropriation or exploitation, and then in a sense, broad development and control of space. And this is where we actually came across the blue economy. And again, we will come back and we will explain and unpack this concept of blue economy a little bit later, because blue economy itself is also not a static concept. It's not like a a singular strategy or policy. We understood through our research. So we'll come back to that also in a little bit. So the way we looked at this, environmental stress, political economic pressures contributed to ruptures. And our sort of point of entry or main area of interest was coastal and small scale fishing communities. Now, all of us across the consortium more or less had an interest, or we had a history working with coastal communities and small scale fishers. So this is, why we kept our interest area as small scale fishers or coastal communities. We also recognize that the small scale fisheries in the Indian Ocean region are diverse and they are vitally important resource economies. And then we also sort of take as our point of departure this idea that impacts of these changes or these ruptures are diverse, and people's responses to these changes are mediated by intersectional social relations, could be gender, ethnicity, race, caste, class, and place. So this is sort of the framing of how, how we went about situating the broader study, which we will now today draw on specifically one such trajectory, which is the blue economy. So this is sort of what we came up as a result of our work. So as I already explained, in the blue sort of the bigger circle, we have bigger processes like the blue economy. It could be port development. It could be in other infrastructure like renewable energy, or mining and activities like that. And then at the same time, we also have the climate change, right, or the natural disasters. So that's the larger cycle. And then our main interest is SSF or small scale fisheries. And then we sort of, we were looking at, or we were observing how the bigger processes were actually contributing to the shrinking of the space that was available for the small scale fishes. That's in the middle, the small island, right? You can see the fractures, you can see the fragmentations, the fissures, and these cracks seem to be opening up, through our study. So and then you can also, so we also saw sort of different ways these shrinking spaces taking place. So it was on the one hand, we spoke of ideological spaces. And this is where, political action or collectivization and spaces like that. And then we looked at institution spaces, for example, fishery societies as institutions, and how space was changing and being negotiated within these different institutions, right? And then we also have the pink sort of responses. So the pink figures actually are the different kinds of responses that we encountered, right? And we will again go back to some of these responses, hopefully with some examples when we speak to our, the country case examples. I mean, I will just say cite one example, what we called withdrawal. So in certain cases, we saw the response was that actually when the space was shrinking, it was being taken away. There was, dispossession, dislocation, displacement taking place, people withdrew. Sometimes to alternate space, or sometimes, to different livelihoods. So this dislocation was happening in different ways. So this is sort of the overall framing for the work we have been doing in the last 3 years, but also for today's discussion. So as I said earlier, blue economy or, blue economy with the capital B and the capital E, but also blue economy with a simple B and a simple E, right? Because we also are sort of framing blue economy today, and again, we will get back to this in the rest of our discussion. We also sort of look at blue economy as a process. It's a historical process. It's not something that is completely only brand new, because we've been hearing the blue economy, this term only quite recently, maybe in the last decade or last 5 years, but we also argue that this framing may be new, but the processes are actually not so new. There is a history behind. So we will get back to that point as well. With this, I now hand over to my colleague, Nadiya Azmi, who will be moderating the rest of the session. So she will also explain the format of the session as well.
Okay, thank you, Gayathri. So, right. So today we have 5 incredible speakers joining us from India, Cambodia, and Kenya, along with Gayathri in our panel today. So the format of our session is we're going to first really talk about some of the concepts of blue economy and some words, right? So maybe we'll start with what the blue economy means, a little more about what we mean by shrinking space, following which we will open it up for some questions. These questions will be taken through a Mentimeter QR code, which I'll share shortly. Then we are going to go to country-specific cases to really show how the blue economy is shaping and playing out in our different cases in our countries that are a part of our consortium. After that, we're going to have an interactive dialogue where we welcome questions from all of you as well. So I'm going to quickly introduce our speakers. So first we have Dr. Gayathri Lokuge. Gayathri is a senior researcher at the Center for Poverty Analysis, and her research focuses on livelihoods with a special focus on fisheries, post-harvest, post-war development and rebuilding, gender and intersectional identities, as well as entrepreneurship. We then have Dr. Kyoko. She is a researcher focusing on gender and development studies at the Asian Institute of Technology. Her research focuses on gender and work, especially on labor, migration, and the informal economy. Her recent studies are in fishing communities in both Thailand and Cambodia. We then have Dr. Betty joining us from Kenya. She is a principal research scientist at the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. Her work focuses on translating aquaculture research findings into societal benefits and livelihoods, targeting small-scale fishing communities at the Kenyan coast, and in particular, seaweed farmers. We then have Dr. Prabhakar joining us. He's a doctoral scholar working with the fishers of the Pork Bay in order to understand and document the labor history. His work interest areas include commons, traditional rights, and collective action. Along with Dr. Prabhakar, Dr. Amalendu is also joining us from India. He's an economist by training, working on institutional economics. His research engagements in the area of institutions and common issues in the context of natural resource in varied geographies in India. In recent decades, he has been focusing on marine and coastal fisheries issues from livelihoods, markets, and consumption perspectives. So this is the QR code for our Mentimeter. If any of y'all can scan this, and if y'all have any questions while the first panel is going, please do send them over. And for everyone on Zoom, we will also be looking at the Zoom chat box following this round of questions. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see our speakers. Okay, right. So my first question is for Gayathri. And Gayathri, what exactly do we mean when we say the blue economy? You did talk a little bit about it, but briefly, yeah.
Yeah, so if we can go back to that visual, I think it would be
Sure,
quite
yes.
useful if we can.
Yes.
So we, as I already mentioned, that there are now quite a few documents and strategic documents, policy papers that's coming out from the region, from the different countries that contains the term blue economy, right? And some of these talk about how the blue economy is supposed to promote ocean-based economic growth and human well-being in a sustainable manner. So this is where the interest basically comes from, looking at the environment ecological angle, the human well-being angle, the human angle, as well as the economics, right? So, there are lots of now, it resonates with sustainable, SDGs and the separate goals that are linked to SDGs. Then, so blue economy goes quite hand in hand and works quite closely with the whole SDG agenda as well. And then some other terms that are sort of associated with the blue economy are things like public-private partnerships. So investments come in. Where is the money going to come from? And then you hear of things like, financing, blue investments. Also, things like even, debt for nature swaps, blue bonds and things like that. So Sri Lanka, I mean, some of you in this audience may already be familiar that we are also having these discussions, right? Especially with, the debt crisis that peaked in 2022 for Sri Lanka. We've been hearing these terms. They're not very new to us. But then what we are trying to do today is to sort of question some of these discourses, right? That's taking place or starting to take place in Sri Lanka as well. So through our research or through our work, what we've also seen across these different countries. So we are talking about Kenya, the two coasts of India, and Cambodia, along with Sri Lanka, right? So in these case countries, what we are also seeing is that at a national level, what is called blue economy policy is also quite diverse. So for example, we have in Kenya, the sector plan for blue economy, which sort of contains and gives direction to where the country wants to go. And Betty, in a short while, will actually give us some examples and give us a little bit of history as to how this policy or the strategy came about for Kenya. Because from our case countries, Kenya seems to be one of the most advanced in terms of not only producing the policy, but making sure that there is also an institutional mechanism that is responsible for implementing this policy. So for example, there is a secretariat for implementing blue economic policy. But then on the other hand, we have Sri Lanka and Cambodia as countries. We do not have blue economic policies yet, but we've done some background work. So we have for Sri Lanka, for example, what is called the blue economic position paper. And then for Cambodia, there is a sort of like a blueprint or a roadmap for the blue economy. And then in Kenya, Amal and Prabhakar, you can actually correct me later if I'm wrong, but as far as we know, there is a draft blue economy from 2020 in India from 2020. So it has not been finalized and approved yet. So the blue economic policies across the region are also quite diverse, right? And then, as I briefly mentioned already, we see blue economy as the latest or the current framing of a process or historical trajectory of coastal development that has mechanization of fishing fleets and things like that had taken place over a few decades. Now you take Sri Lanka, for example, we talk of the blue revolution in the fisheries sector. which happened in the 70s and the 80s, right? So what do we mean by the Blue Revolution is that the fishing fleet started becoming mechanized. We saw rapidly increasing mechanization of the fishing fleet from the non-mechanized to the mechanized. And we also speak in the Sri Lanka context how the north and the east of the country that was directly affected by the war at that point actually lost out on the Blue Revolution. And as a result, we see still like within the country, a huge disparity in terms of when it comes to the fishing sector, especially the deep sea fishing sector. So we speak of modernization, like the Blue Revolution, the modernization of the fleet. And we also can speak of coastal development. I mean, this is where things like tourism, of port development, harbor development comes in. I mean, these are not new things, right? But what is happening now through these blue economy policies or the framing is that all of these coastal developments are being brought under one umbrella or this one sort of flag. It's blue economy. The current iteration is blue economy. But in today's discussion as well, we are not only focusing on the so-called, formal blue economy policies, but we are also interested in these, sort of longer trajectories that had impacted our countries into, creating certain kinds of spaces for the coastal communities, including small-scale fishers and, women fish processors, actors in these spaces. So I think I'll stop there for now.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Gayathri. My next question is for Betty. Betty, can you help us understand what the blue economy policies are like in Kenya, and what does it entail for a country to have a blue economy policy, as Sri Lanka does not have one yet?
So, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of the meeting for...
No, she's not muted. Betty, give us a second. We cannot hear you.
Oh.
Make a man.
Do you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Sorry, Betty, do you mind speaking now?
Do you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Is it okay now?
Okay, sorry, Betty, we still can't hear you. Do you mind changing the volume on your device a little bit to see if that will help us?
It's actually full.
All right. Okay, but we
it's
can't
really-
hear.
I wonder
It's on
what
our
happened.
side.
It was okay earlier.
Sorry about it.
Yeah.
Betty, hang on. We can't hear you on this side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine online. I don't know if you
Is it
can hear
better?
me as well.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I think I can go ahead now. I just said I wanted to thank the organizers of the meeting for the opportunity to participate and share our experiences. Now, Kenya lies on the eastern coast of Africa. Of course, we have an extensive and valuable 640-kilometer long coastline with rich marine ecosystems, with an estimated 245,000 square kilometers of ocean area under its jurisdiction. In addition, the country holds a strategic position within the Indian Ocean region, which is a host to an estimated 1/3 of the world's population, and is also a conduit for 2/3 of the world's oil shipment and a significant share of the global traffic, granting us access to a vast endowment of ocean resources, including being Africa's access to the world. These resources offer immense potential for economic growth, job creation, and improved livelihood. Now, concerning public policy making in Kenya, there is a specialized agency that supports this public policy making. It's called the Kenya Institute of Public Policy Research and Analysis. This is a state corporation that was established by an act of parliament with a primary mandate for providing quality policy advice to the government of Kenya and other key stakeholders by conducting policy research and analysis through capacity building in order to contribute to the achievement of a national long-term development objective. So to speak, most policy direction is provided by this institution that is just mandated to do just that. So besides initiating policy that is needed for the public by this institution, others are done by public demand, where economic sectors require special policy. Now, as far as the blue economy is concerned, having recognized the potential for the blue economy to Kenya's overall development agenda and the need to fully exploit it, the government in 2015 established a State Department for Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Blue Economy within the Ministry of Agriculture. This State Department was meant to coordinate the matters of the blue economy. As we all know, the blue economy cuts across several sectors of the economy. Then in 2016, the government further considered it necessary to establish a standalone blue economy committee that would then focus completely on the development of Kenya's blue economy, with a full secretariat that was established under the office of the president. This committee was tasked to develop a master operational plan that identified the economic sectors that should be prioritized for development of the Kenya's blue economy, and also identify the factors that would be constraining the full exploitation of these priority economic sectors. The committee was also mandated to develop prioritized programs and projects required to unlock the growth of the economic priority sectors, such as enabling policy, infrastructure development, like development of fish ports and capacity building for the fisheries industry and all the other industries, all the other priority economic sectors. The committee was also mandated, tasked to develop an organizational structure to oversee the execution of the Blue Economy Master Operational Plan for Kenya. So this committee prepared and submitted a plan to the a report to the president with a comprehensive report that responded to the terms of reference, and it had clear and complete and resource delivery work plans for each program under the project. The report was dubbed Rediscovering the Road to Prosperity. And this marked the first clear direction for Kenya's blue economy. And the priority sectors that the Blue Economy Committee identified for development included fisheries and aquaculture, maritime transport and logistics, the training of seafarers for the cruise industry, and the revival of the then defunct national shipping line. Moving forward, recently in 2022, a fully fledged ministry for mining, blue economy, and maritime affairs was established. That is under the current administration. So this ministry basically oversees the blue economy matters. And the ministry has currently developed a blue economy strategy, which is undergoing a stakeholder consultation and public participation. At the same time, the ministry is also developing our marine spatial plan, which would then help manage the space, the ocean space, in a sustainable manner. Now, additionally, Kenya is also a member of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, an initiative that is championing a sustainable ocean economy, which was initiated in 2018. And under this panel, Kenya has committed to sustainably manage 100% of the ocean areas under its national jurisdiction, guided by a sustainable ocean plan by 2025. Now, the Kenya Sustainable Ocean Plan will provide a comprehensive framework for harnessing the blue economy while ensuring the long-term health and productivity of our oceans. Guided by the principles of sustainability, inclusivity, and innovation, the Kenya Sustainable Ocean Plan will align with the national goals outlined in the 4th medium-term plan of Kenya's development blueprint, which we call the Kenya Vision 2030. Now, This integrated approach will definitely catalyze transformation of Kenya's ocean and blue economy sectors while empowering the coastal and marine communities, maritime communities, and ensuring a resilient ocean and blue economy. So in the currently we are in the space of developing several strategies and from the different economic sectors and aligning them together to form this sustainable ocean plan, which we believe will then be the long-term vision for managing sustainably the blue economy and the ocean economy, so to speak. I'll stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Betty. We're going to need a minute to sort our sounds. Munas, do you mind? Okay, my next question is for Kyoko. But we have another issue. Let's change my platform. Isn't working too well. Okay, sorry about that. Betty, are you able to hear me, and Kyoko?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Right.
Yes,
So
you
Kyoko,
can.
my next question is for you, and I'd like to ask, how is the blue economy gendered, and why is a gender analysis important when we look at the blue economy?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share. So the question on why we need to use gender analysis, why do we need to use feminist analysis when we are looking at the blue economy? So feminist analysis or gender analysis is important for the blue economy policies and program development, since it would be able to help us to identify who are the most affected and why, how they are responding to the change, or how such change affects further their vulnerability, and how can we make sure that the blue economy will benefit more people, especially by providing security to the poor and the
Kyoko, please give us a minute. I'm really sorry. We're having a small problem with the audio. Hold on. Are you able to hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you very well. So shall I repeat from the very beginning, or I can just continue? Hello? Shall I repeat, or shall I continue? Were you able to hear the beginning? Hello, Nadiya? Nadiya, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kyoko, online, but I think they are not able to hear you or hear us.
Right. They're not responding anymore.
Looks like internet has a bigger problem than blue economy.
Immediate problem.
Yeah.
Next, a bit of some technical issues. Kyoko, you can speak now, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
so shall I start from the beginning or should I just continue? Were you able to hear? Hello. Nadiya, shall I start from the beginning or shall I continue?
Yes, please. Can you start from the beginning if that's okay? We're gonna listen from this laptop for a little bit. We're really sorry. Yeah. Okay, Kyoko, you can go on. Yeah.
Okay, so I should start from the beginning or
Yes. Yes, please start from the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so as we were talking about the gender analysis or the feminist analysis is important for the blue economy policies and program development, since it helps us to identify who are the most affected and why, how they are responding to the change, how such change affects further their vulnerability, and how we can make sure that the blue economy will benefit more people, especially by providing security to the poor and the marginalized. So feminist analysis, it's very important to note that feminist analysis is not concerned with women as a sex group, but it is an analysis of social norms and structures that create disadvantages and marginalization. So it is but then there is often the case that women tend to be the most vulnerable because of the historical disadvantages that they suffer from. So that's why we kind of often focus more on women. So, but feminist analysis or gender analysis does not take women as a group or as a monolith. It distinguishes among women, attempting to capture the identities that would differentiate the situation, include age, class, ethnicity, religion. So that means that we are taking consideration the intersectionality. So taking that understanding, there are several factors that shape women's experiences that is different from men in the blue economy. So important factors that create gender gaps under the blue economy includes women's role in support, especially women's role in supporting the fishing households financially through various non-fisheries activities. So that's one thing. The lack of access to resources, the lack of voices in decision-making, and all of these leading to invisibility of women's role in fishing communities. So those are the factors that is there. So these factors lead to women in fishing communities being disproportionately affected by the blue economy, which includes, for example, women losing space for their livelihoods, such as drying and processing fish, because the coastal spaces are taken over by the investments, or that they are affected more by pollution, both water, soil, and air, because they depend more on gleaning, that is collecting aquatic resources along the shore. And since also they spend more time in the community, taking care of children, the sick, and the elderly. So if the pollution is there, and then they get more affected by the pollution. They can have more difficulty marketing fish because the new infrastructure can exclude women small-scale traders, which also happened in India, or they lose out by the dominance of larger players who tend to be headed by men, which also happened in Cambodia. They will also have more difficulty getting fish to sell since their men might have less fish to catch under the blue economy. So there are a lot of negative, so women are affected much more negatively under the blue economy. But at the same time, it is not to say that everything that blue economy policy, under the blue economy policy is negative. There are some positive issues like creating more opportunity. So, there's some of the opportunities created are through investment under the blue economic policies and programs, creating more jobs, such as jobs in tourism. We have seen coastal women fishers supplementing household income successfully through these new job opportunities. So fisher women are often engaged in such non-fisheries work, so the job opportunities can increase, and then they can diversify their livelihoods and income sources under this kind of a development along the coast. So how much women are able to exercise their agencies and respond to these changes, maximizing benefits and minimizing disadvantages, depends on various factors that differ considerably across locations. So therefore, it is important to conduct feminist analysis or gender analysis in each location so that we can assess the impacts on women and men, identifying who are most affected and why, and provide appropriate support to maximize the benefits and leave no one behind. And then it's important that women small-scale fishers participate in the decision-making and their voices are heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kyoko. And we're really sorry about the technical issues that we're having. But thanks so much for everyone online as well for keep on holding on with us. Okay, so my next question is for Amal. So Amal, we did hear a little bit about how the blue economy is an iteration of a longer history of ocean and coastal development. And Kyoko also helped us understand why gendered analysis is important. Amal, can you help us understand what exactly we mean by shrinking space?
Yeah, thanks, Nadiya, and thanks team for hosting this very nice event, and thank you for allowing me as a speaker in this panel. Just taking forward from what Gayathri, Betty, and Kyoko spoke, I think broadly, if you look at the blue economic policies that is being planned, designed, or some kind of blueprint that is being done by different countries, what comes to the center of it is that the economic activities, which means we see how much money we are going to kind of invest and how much money that we are going to get in terms of return out of this. And possibly a second thing that comes from this is that how much fish that we are going to extract from the ocean and marine resources, and how much gain we are going to make out of this fish. But broadly, if you see that in all these policies, the actors, particularly the fishers, they are not being considered in the center of this planning. And if you globally look at about 500, or to be a lot more precise, from FAO 492 million people whose life and livelihood is dependent on this, 45 million of them are women. In India, about 5 million fishers, men are engaged in fishing activity in the coastal and marine scape. Equal number of women are there in this activity. And these people, and among these, majority of them, almost 80 to 90% of them are small-scale fishers, and they don't come into the scheme of this blue economic activities. And in this space, I would say there are about 4 ways that we see this fishers, small-scale fishers, both men and women, whose space is essentially shrinking, right? So one of the activity that happens, which Gayathri also mentioned, was about the different kind of activities like port expansion, harbor expansion, new port and harbor construction that is happening, different kind of tourism activities, including ecotourism activities that has been kind of designed and planned. All these are essentially taking away space from the small scale fishers who have been using this space for using their jetty, their boats, and doing fishing activities, and especially women using this space for fish drying related activities. So we are seeing some kind of shrinking that is happening in this case. Tourism particularly is kind of exponentially growing, where number of hotels, resorts, and other spaces are coming up in beach coastal areas. There are beaches which are common, are becoming private in some or other forms, right? The second way that we are seeing is that the coastal erosion and accretion that is happening. And the coastal erosion, if you see that the people who have been using this particular space, they don't have a claim to being affected by this erosion. Whereas when the accretion is happening, we are seeing that this accreted space is claimed by state, and then state provides it to somebody who bids more money for this kind of space. It can be used for resort, it can be used for harbor, or it can be used for port. So varieties of activities in this accredited space. So it disproportionately kind of impacts the erosion is impacting the small scale fishers, whereas the accretion is the benefits are not accrued to the small scale fishermen and women both. A third type of thing that has developed in recent times, largely we see it in the estuarine areas, where number of places where you'll find something called cage culture that has come up. The cages are where we kind of grow exotic kind of species. In India, you find sea bass as a kind of a species that has been kind of preferred. And these fishes are fed also with varieties of fish, small fishes, including mackerel, to grow them to appropriate size and export them. So that is one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is that the cage culture itself is essentially creating a private space within this estuarine, which was kind of a common space. And this common was again used by small scale fishers, including women. And large number of women in Indian West Coast particularly, I have seen, who use this space for different kinds of bivalves like clams, oysters, etc., gleaning, and those kind of activities they were engaged in this space. Now their space is shrinking in their activities for bivalve collection and selling it in the market. The fourth way that I would say is that this change is happening is little complicated. It is basically the utilization of fish. So when the marine fish catch, particularly in many areas globally, we know that the kind of fish catch has kind of overfishing is happening, and many of the areas have been identified as the overfished area. In India, also, if you see last 2 decades, the marine fish catch has been largely stagnant, about 4 million tons every year. In that fish, now that the claims are coming from different sources, and one of the major claim in recent time that has increased is from fish meal and fish oil industry. Fish meal and fish oil industry take this fish to kind of make fish meal, fish oil, and it's kind of turned into aquafeed, and aquaculture activities, particularly shrimp culture activity, has increased dramatically in many of the coastal areas. And these are essentially the small fishes, which are kind of affordable fishes, which are converted into fish meal, and then that is being fed to shrimps, and most of the shrimps are getting exported from India. Almost 90% of this aquaculture shrimp is getting exported. So what is happening in that is that same amount of fish, a large proportion of it is going into the fish meal, fish oil industries. So what is happening is that there is a competition between men and women, particularly small scale fisher women who have been using this fish for fish drying and fish trading activities. They are not getting enough fish for this activity. So that livelihood space and that space, the claim on that particular fish, that is also shrinking in this. So these are some of the broader ways that kind of shrinking of space that is happening. It is just not a physical space, but also economic space, livelihood space, cultural space. All those spaces are kind of in many ways shrinking. I would kind of stop it there, and then maybe we can get into specific examples later to say how it is disproportionately impacting or differently impacting the women in the fishery sector. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Amal, for that. My next question is for Prabhakar. So what I want to know is, now Amal and actually all our speakers did talk about how shrinking space impacts small-scale fishers. So Prabhakar, can you help us understand how fishers are responding to this? Is there resistance? How does that work?
As far as the east coast of India is concerned, and in this particular project, it's myself and Professor Ajit Menon have looked into 2 projects. One focused on aquaculture and seaweed farming, and the other focused on the deep sea fishing. So for this presentation, I would largely focus on the aquaculture and seaweed story. So when we look at how fishers particularly the small-scale fishers, respond to this shrinking space issue, we saw the existing social and economic inequalities that are in existence in the society are played out. Especially the small-scale fishers are at the receiving end. Menon, Sovan, and Bhavnik have written a piece which looked at transformation, rethinking capitalist transformation of fisheries in South Africa and India. When you look in that particular academic piece, they have looked at the difference that exists between the need economy versus the market economy. So, particularly in this terrain, and India in general, the caste system plays a major role in terms of deciding who lives where and what kind of access that people have, in various settings. So, the two caste groups that we studied from three different villages are Kadayas and Muttarayar. So Kadayas are scheduled caste, also known as untouchables, whereas the Muttarayas are MBC, most backward classes. So when you look at their position, they are socially, economically, and politically at the margins. So over the period of time in this particular location, we saw the dominant production processes. For example, aquaculture. Aquaculture have taken over a large portion of their land through both market-related transactions and also forced. And this production process is sidelining the existing hold that they have over coastal beaches and nearshore waters. There are scholars like Bhavnik, Burks, and Bennett have looked into this framework called coastal and ocean grabbing. It is in the initial period of its existence, and there are lots of work that it requires in order to understand how this is playing out in the global south. So these two communities are practicing both farming and fishing practices. So they were involved in agriculture before. At present, they are involved in small-scale fishing and also involved in seaweed farming. When you look at the kind of resistance or acceptance that they have practiced over the period of time with respect to this dominant aquaculture industry, though they were able to put forward a resistance in the initial period with the help of civil societies, this is in late 1990s, where they were able to resist to a certain extent, but then it became a kind of law and order issue, and then a case was registered against a group of fishers, small-scale fishers, about 150 of them, and a case was running for over 5 years. And the kind of experience that people faced during that period determined their response in the next phase of aquaculture industrial exponential period. So most within the environmental politics or struggle in India, it is largely the people have used judiciary as a means to determine the rights of various communities. Judiciary, though, have evolved concepts like National Green Tribunal and things like that, but still the market economy is actually having a better say, primarily because of the power that they have over or in alliance with the ruling class. So these smaller movements that were in existence every now and then in the coastal regions are mostly regional based and caste based. So they were not able to form larger alliances and also the kind of fragmentation that we saw since 1960s and 70s are impacting the coalition of coming together of various caste groups against especially their economic interest or in no, towards their economic interest. So this fragmentation on one side, and also the kind of in the last 10 to 15 years, the kind of politics that is in existence in the center, where the environmental advocacy, civil societies are being targeted regularly, and they were not able to function freely in a democratic setup. So both these are no, not helping the interest of small scale fishers, and we see no smaller protests happening here and there, but it is not consistent, and they are not able to bring any results. As a result, people are trying to look for avenues to address their concerns. For example, in this particular region, we see no petitions are being written every now and then, and to the government officials, and also smaller individual environmental activists are taking up cases once in a while. But no, we are seeing a trend where market forces are able to determine how things to be done, and the small scale fishers are at the receiving end. Yeah, thanks. With this, probably I'll explain you a bit in the next round about about the kind of changes that are happening in a more detailed fashion. Thanks.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Prabhakar, for that. We're going to now open it out for a round of questions before we focus on the particular case studies. And Dr. Gayathri is going to moderate that. So shall we start with the audience? Does anyone have any questions for us so far?
So what we will do is, we can hear the questions on this end, so we'll repeat it for the panelists. I think that's how we'll have to, because the mic is here.
They can speak to the
Okay,
phone.
all right. They can.
If you have questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Amal. You have, okay, all right.
Okay.
But why don't you ask it, Amali?
So I was interested to know if there have been any feminist resistance, instances of feminist resistance to blue economy with capital B and E.
Okay. Perhaps can I please ask Betty to respond to that, because from our experience, we've seen that again among our countries, Kenya again had some interesting responses. Cambodia very different again, but an interesting set of responses. But if we can start with Betty, please, and if you can explain a little bit to us about what, especially the women seaweed farmers, and how they sort of dealt with these developments that were happening, the coastal development that was happening around them.
I beg your pardon, I missed the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes. So the question was, what sort of feminist resistance or protests had taken place? I mean, the question was generic, but I thought it would be good, Betty, if you could answer it, especially, based on your experience with the women seaweed farmers.
Okay, yeah. So with regard to our particular study site, and in particular the big investment that affected the seaweed farmers, the response they had was to organize themselves and actually do a protest, a demonstration, in order to stop, to try and stop the steel manufacturing company, because this steel manufacturing company came and actually just hived a huge piece of land from the village and started dredging the sea area that was used by the fishing village for fishing and seaweed farming. You could see from this these pictures how the seaweed died. So what happened was the community, of course, lost its income, and they could not get the harvest that they usually get. And it caused a lot of conflict, and they organized themselves and protested. They mobilized the community with their leaders and protested, actually demonstrated, in order to draw attention and try and get the company out of the village. Thank you.
The question then is, did they succeed?
So temporarily, the operations of that company was actually halted. What happened was that after these protests, the company realized they could not just go against the community per se. So it led to stakeholder consultations and bringing on board even government agencies and temporarily the dredging and the establishment of the company, so to speak, was stopped. But even a few months ago, when I went there, the speed with which they came and the intended establishment of the steel manufacturing company was still not yet going on. So we do not know whether this has succeeded in the long term, but for now, they have stopped those constructions. So we are still waiting to see whether it will be reignited.
So we have two questions. One here, the first one here, and then I'll come to you.
Presented in a way that as solutions to problems, but they end up creating more problems, especially for the working class, or like, the marginalized communities. So when they're presented as solutions to environmental issues, they get a lot of public support. And also, like, from the larger society, there's a lot of backing for that, especially like if you take a country like Sri Lanka with economic crisis, they're looked at as all solving, better solutions. So in terms of navigating these terms and understanding what they actually mean, especially for local communities, how can we navigate it?
I wonder, did our online participants hear the question? Betty, Kyoko?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Would any one of you like to take the question, please? So we can also, from our side, we can also come in, but I would like to give the floor to one of you first.
Shall I take it?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the kind of experience that we have in the east coast of India is that projected as the prosperity that it has, one, and second is there is a set of literature that we see where it says that blue economy has learnt its lesson from blue revolution. The kind of experience that small scale fisher had with blue revolution and the marginality that they faced is something that would not happen again in blue economy. These are all, mostly policy papers or literatures that suggest, for example, concepts like blue justice and things like that. So, but in the field, it is not the case. Though aquaculture was brought in since agriculture has been going down and there is not much of investment happening in India at present, and it is not remunerative in some sense. So these lands are being now taken over by aquaculture industries, promising employment, promising better investment in the local regions, and also increase in fishing returns. But over a period of time, the interest of capital has been that in order to reduce the wage questions, they have brought in migrants from elsewhere, from north and northeastern regions, and they are been working for one third of the money that has been given to the local communities. Similarly, the pollution level has increased so much, and these are all something that people started experiencing only after the introduction or establishment of this industry. They were not aware that the groundwater would become saline after the introduction. So civil societies are playing a role in terms of educating the public, and also challenging the existence of unlawful farms and hatcheries. But it is a long struggle, and communities are not really able to sustain the struggle for years together, because once the case enters into a judicial system, it takes anywhere between 5 and 10 years to get results. Meanwhile, it is quite difficult, especially for women who has various roles. For example, collecting water, potable water for the families, and also giving water to livestock and things like that. So civil societies are playing a role, and political parties, especially left parties, have played a role in some regions, but not much. But on a larger scale, in the state or union level, the things that we saw or hearing is that they are not much interested in knowing the existing realities or evidences, where especially the marginalized communities who are living in this region are being at the receiving end, and their economy is being affected on a larger scale. And as they don't have much say in the political arena, their interests are not being taken into consideration both in the assembly and also in the parliament. Thanks.
Gayathri, if I can add to this, and there is a very interesting response from Prabhakar, if it is okay.
Sorry. Sorry, I thought I was going to hold that. It's just okay.
So Ama's going to add a little bit. Yeah.
Is it okay? Yeah. So I think that thanks for that question. It's a very interesting question as well. And what we are also seeing, I mean, that's not only true for the place West Coast or East Coast of India, but also to a larger part of the global system, is that it is quite complex and intertwined in a way that identifying and single out a specific group from one to the other is not so easy. The second is the interdependency is so much that it is not easy to kind of segregate and take out that you can take out one group and then everything else will fall into place. That's also not that easy. To give some examples, for example, the fish meal, fish oil industry depends big time on trawlers. And trawlers, when they go for trawling and they're kind of competing on the same space for fish and not getting enough fish, then get into varieties of activities like bull trawling, bottom trawling, even personals have come in, then they try to kind of catch as much as possible. And the fish meal industry provides a stable market for them. So now the kind of strong relationship between the fish meal industry and trawler, that's not easy to break. All the trawl owners are not the external players. In some cases, it is the fishers who have combined themselves to kind of make a big trawl for themselves. So the fishers who have combined their money together to kind of run this trawlers and person. So these are fishers basically. A lot of these trawl owners also own small boats, and they are also can be identified as small scale fisher. In India, for example, the data is not so clear about who is a small scale fisher and who is a large scale fisher. we see it by the kind of size of boat or the kind of size of motors or non-motorized, mechanized. This is the way we kind of divide. So, so it is not easy to kind of separate them out. Secondly, the country also depends sometime on having sufficient foreign exchange, export earning. Maybe it is much more true for Sri Lanka that they have to kind of get that money from different sources, and fishery provides, fish aquaculture provides that kind of active scope for them. And in that these industries, the people who are working, they are also kind of poor migrant labor. So when we have to kind of imagine for a solution, keeping the ecological factor, keeping the livelihood factor in mind, it's not easy either or solution. But we understand that capital is playing a role, but whose capital, what is the nature this capital is percolating into the space is complex. It is not straight, direct that we can kind of find an answer to this and kind of narrow down on those particular group of people or particular activity, and we can kind of put a stop to those kind of activity. So I think that is a kind of challenge the marine scape and this entire value chain of that marine scape kind of poses a challenge. I just wanted to add that part to it.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Amal. We'll go to two more questions now, please.
Yeah, I think mine actually may rather redundant now, but mine was going to ask earlier, because especially with Betty and the fact that she actually was talking about policymaking and stakeholder consultation, and then she gave this example of a immediate success in through the consultation. Whether the rest of the policy making that Kenya has gone through, has it actually learned a lesson or gone through this consultation? But I think maybe some of these other, that question can be parked for the moment, because we've gone on another trajectory right now.
We can go back to the policy question at some point.
There is also
Would you like me
interest in
to
other areas.
respond to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a question on skills development in the blue economy. I worked on some projects after the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, and I noticed that majority of Sri Lankan kids, men and women, do not learn swimming skills in school, unlike some countries which are, close to the sea. So and even now, from time to time on school trips, you hear of teenage kids drowning and so on. So in other countries that are involved in this, what are the steps you have taken to develop life skills like swimming in the blue economy?
Betty, can I ask you to respond to that, please? On skills development angle.
For skills development angle, I do know
Hang on, Betty.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
You hear me? Yeah. No, as skills development is a big agenda within the blue economy strategy and policy in the that the Kenya government is pushing. I mean, skills that cuts across all the sectors of the blue economy, from teaching fishermen how to training them how to fish, and training seafarers, and the tourism sector and so forth. Actually, the under the blue economy, once the blue economy was established as an economic sector, the government established what we call the Bandari Maritime Academy, which is meant to be a center of excellence for training all sorts of skill sets within the maritime sector. So that is a big agenda within the Kenya government for all sectors of the blue economy. But in particular, for the question that was asked about skills like swimming, I must say, in the fishing villages, And in regard to women in particular, that there's a huge gap. Most women, like even the seaweed farmers, are not swimmers. And that is an area that needs to be addressed. And I could see a colleague, Cecil, on the line. Within a project that we did in Zanzibar, there was actually a special attention and component that was targeted towards training women to swim so that they could go further into the sea as they do their seaweed farming. And I think that's something that can be emulated and and expanded along the coast in other areas, because that is one of the things that restricts their advance and optimizing their capacity, even to farm or even to fish or glean. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Kyoko, can you also please respond to that previous question on, I think there were a couple of questions on sort of like, yes, Betty, would you like to say something?
May I add one thing? Yeah, somebody asked something on policy, public participation in policy making. In Kenya, that is so critical because it's enshrined in our constitution, and the public takes that extremely seriously. In fact, like I think sometime last year, our Fisheries Act was suspended because a group of fishermen in one of in the Lamu area insisted. They went to court to say that they were not consulted in passing of the law, and for some months the law was suspended until an appeal allowed some sections, only that section to be put at bay. And so public participation in Kenya is a very serious. Anybody can stop you from implementing a policy or a strategy in case any group feels that they have not been consulted. So yeah, it's taken seriously.
Thanks, Betty. There were lots of raised eyebrows in this room, of course, from the Sri Lankans. Kyoko, so I would like to come back to you, please. So there were a couple of questions about, feminist resistance or these responses. And we know from our work that the Cambodia case is slightly different to, what we've been discussing so far. So can you please elaborate a little bit on, what we found on the ground as response coming from different groups?
Because I think this question on feminist resistance is very
interesting. Give us a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I think this question on feminist resistance is very interesting. So, because in Cambodia, there was a lot of this land grabs and all that in the coastal area. There were investments coming in. The coasts were taken by the factories or by tourism, or like their sand reclamation, extending the beach. So all these kind of things have been really affecting the fishing community quite a lot. So at one point in time, there was a vibrant resistance movement by the people, but then it didn't go anywhere. So the government didn't really listen. So, but then at the same time, what happened is that there have been factories coming up, resorts coming up. So people were getting jobs under this blue economy. So some people got jobs, but some people were still doing fishing. So people who got jobs kind of started to benefit from the blue economy, said, okay, this is quite okay. And then they were saying that so the whole movement, resistance movement, started to be cracked. They started to divide it. Some people were pro-investment because they really got a lot of benefit through employment, investment, and all these kind of things, whereas other people wanted to secure their fishing as their occupation, and then they still tried to protect the fishery resources. So they have been divided. So, but then because of the divisions, the whole resistance movement have become very weak. Now, the women were much more pro the fishing resources because they were the one they also benefited from tourism, but then their kind of tourism was very small scale. So if they don't have the resources, it's not very profitable for them. So they do need the fish resources to be there, yeah, and then also have access to the shores and all that. So women were more pro fishing. yeah, so the resources. So what they did, so there was one village where the village headman's daughter, the village headman was more pro-investment, and then the daughter was against the investment, and then so they kind of was apart in in the same household. And then what this woman did was that she have organized the woman, and then to have a women's group that would go against the investment. But then unlike the men who went out for more visible and in one sense a little bit violent kind of aggressive protest, these women have started to organize forums, like forums inviting this dignitary, that dignitary, and then started to have. So they have changed the way that protests are being done. Yeah, so while the men were starting to feel a lot of apathy and then being divided, women were the one who was keeping the protest alive through different kind of strategies. So in that sense, I think this whole issue on the woman's way of protest is a very interesting way to look at things. Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Munas.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role of financial institutions and development banks, and when it comes to this, but also like, does any of this evidence get factored into how they are pushing the blue economy, but also like debt instruments like blue bonds, no? Like, so just to understand how they are located in all of this.
Betty, would you be able to, I hope you got the question. So the question was about the role of the financial institutions. And I mean, I'm not very sure whether this is I don't think we've really discussed this, but maybe you know from your experience in the Kenya case, the role that the financial institutions play in you know, how the policy, the blue economy policy is being implemented. And are there any like sort of lessons that we can extract?
Yeah. So yeah, I think I can give an example of the World Bank in particular. We've had, I think, 2 major World Bank projects that support coastal development. There was the Kenya Coastal Development Project that was implemented, and it supported the fishing communities, developing infrastructure, and the initial, so to speak, commercialization of seaweed farming within the villages that we are talking about. So World Bank has played a big role, and currently we also have another World Bank project, which is actually supporting the development of our marine spatial plan and other infrastructure, partly supporting development of some fishing ports and building capacity actually for the fishing community, and even the other small fishing villages with livelihood options. So yeah, I can give that example of the World Bank. But in the larger frame of things, usually when there is a generally speaking, usually when there is a big government agenda, the development banks come in on you know, at different levels, either in providing loans or different types of financing. As far as blue bonds are concerned, Kenya still doesn't have, we have not reached that level. It's still under discussion, but we have not, we still do not have an experience of having benefited from blue bonds. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Kyoko, you can go next. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I just want to give some example from Cambodia. Yeah, I just want to give some example from Cambodia. One is at the port. The deep sea port in Cambodia has been developed through the investment from China. So the Chinese investment have gone a lot. And then And then one of the communities, a very rich community at the coastal area, have been affected by those kind of investment. But then so these rich communities were even not able to prevent that. So that sent a signal, very negative signal to all the communities around, saying that, oh, if that rich communities, very well connected community cannot even prevent, what kind of chances do we have? So it really sent a very bad message to everybody. So it did really send a bad example to everybody. So another example is from, actually, this is Inland ADB did this study, this project to have, it's really, when the blue economy word was not there, they were already doing that, yeah, using tourist app to develop tourism and all that, community tourism and all that. So all the concepts were fine, and then it was all, yeah, it was, but then the problem was that they did not really strengthen the community, the fishing community's right and entitlement to that area, and then just introduce this kind of blue economy. So now the private sectors are coming in, pretending as if they are community, and then they are taking all the advantages, while the community themselves are not able to benefit from that because they didn't have the entitlement for that area. So it's really, I mean, the intention was good, but then the outcome was really quite sad.
Thanks so much, Kyoko. Amal, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think this experience is similar in the West Coast, particularly in Karnataka, the experience. And what Betty said, it was World Bank supported. Here it was Asian Development Bank, which supported to the coastal erosion that was happening. So the idea behind this was to how to kind of mitigate this coastal erosion. And the solution they came up with was to kind of put big boulders around the coast so that it can prevent erosion. So the consequence of this was twofold. One side that we saw was that wherever you prevented it, that was fine, but you cannot put the entire coast on boulders. So the remaining regions, you found that there is erosion that is happening adjacent to the boulder area. There was erosion happening. The second thing that we saw was that particularly how it impacted the small scale fishers is that they used to take their say non-motorized boats or jetties through the, and they used to do beach landing. And most cases there are beach landing in Karnataka, the west coast. We see there are 8-9 major harbors, but there are about 90 odd beach landing spaces where basically small scale fishers land their fish. So now with these boulders, their small scale fishers are not able to land their boats in this particular space. And also it is kind of the women who used to use that space for kind of fish drying activity, then that also created another kind of problem. So this funding and this idea of financing came with a bigger idea of preventing coastal erosion or mitigating coastal erosion, but it ended up creating more problems for particularly for the small scale fishers. Thanks.
Thanks, Amal. Are there any further questions from the? Yeah, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to ask, how can a new blue economic policy accommodate or change the dual role that is traditionally played by women in the fishing industry, in the unpaid care work they do, along with their livelihoods in the fishing industry?
Sort of like transformative change is what you are looking at. Kyoko, would you be able to respond to that? I can also give it a try.
Yeah. I think this is also very interesting, because like we do expect that if blue economy comes, and then the benefit would also change, yes, the change gender relations and all that. But then so the investment comes. The problem is, that when the investment comes, it becomes the effect is urbanization. industrialization. So it's that they are pulling the people out from like agriculture fisheries and then into more industries and service sectors, and all that is what is the situation. So when that happens, and then the whole paid unpaid work become much more exacerbated, because like you are now employed by other people. Once you get employed by other people, this paid unpaid work become more exacerbated. And then many of the times, like for example in Cambodia, blue economy comes, and then there's also a lot of out migration. Because in one sense, because the fishing have declined, so and then people have been able to get some education through fishing. In Cambodia, the coastal is not that poor, so and then they get education, they go to the urban area, and then so they leave the fishing area. So now we also have aging issue in the fishing community. So now who's going to take care of the elderly? So it's child care, elderly care. So the whole blue economy is bringing out the whole issue of care into a very large scale. It has really advanced this issue of the problem of care economy to a much. So it's not really solving, it's actually exacerbated the problem. So we really have to flag this in the discussion of blue economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyoko. I think you gave a nice example of what's happening in Cambodia. And if I may add a little bit from the Sri Lanka case as well. So what we are also seeing, especially on the northwest coast, quite similar trends. So we are seeing some of the traditional livelihoods had been in fish marketing or in fish processing for the women in the area, right? But with this development, the coastal development, tourism coming, actually, now developing quite rapidly, we are also seeing different kinds of jobs being created. So, women, especially younger women, are going into, more into the apparel sector than the tourism sector. We're also seeing a bit of a hierarchy actually there. So it's a choice being a woman fish seller in a market versus working in a hotel in the area in the same neighborhood, mind you, with all the social taboos attached to, going to work in a hotel from home, as opposed to, boarded somewhere and no one knows where you're working, right? So there's a difference there. Versus working in a factory, manufacturing. This is mostly apparel, the free trade zone, Biagama, Karnak, that area. So we are seeing again exactly what Kyoko, mentioned, and it's interesting how these parallels are working out, right? So you do see women going into paid employment because they seem to prefer that, especially the younger women. But then on the other hand, who's looking after their children that they're leaving behind at home, right? Again, it's the grandmother usually. So it's sort of this sort of I don't want to call it a cycle, but it's that sort of where this seems to be leading. So unfortunately, we don't have a response to your question of how these processes can be transformative. We're actually, just flipping the coin completely and saying that actually it's not. It's actually, creating more care burden for, again, certain groups of women, especially in the Sri Lankan context, that then left with, carrying this burden and taking care of the elderly as well as the younger children.
May
Betty, do you have something to add?
Yes, because our experience is slightly different. Because for us, the idea of the blue economy and particularly the public sector support, the government support to mostly the communities in this study area was about a really equitable prosperity. Because some of those fishing villages are really occupied by communities that are marginalized and very vulnerable. So the idea, for instance, for those kind of fishing communities like the seaweed farmers is, how do you lift them from the poverty line, so that each person, each Kenyan can have a decent life. So our experience is that, for instance, the investments that the government had to go and support those fishing villages where seaweed farming was done, was that it brought those women to a level of empowerment. Many of them now could educate their children. From all this period, now they could find children finishing college and secondary school, and there are several women who are able to construct permanent houses on their own. So our experience is such that the blue economy is overall for socioeconomic development. Now, what maybe is the issue is the fact that the separate areas for different types of either commercial or large-scale blue economy development, and what the fishing villages did, have not been demarcated in a marine spatial plan earlier on. So overall, I think what can resolve the situation is a marine spatial plan where areas will be really demarcated, so that fishing villages with whatever they have been doing as their livelihood options will not be interfered with. So for us, it was the idea of going to the fishing, to the communities, to help them uplift their lives and livelihoods using what they are doing already, but giving them capacity to do it better. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Betty, for that. We're going to now, before we go to another round of questions, just share a little bit of some of our findings, just specifically to demonstrate what gendered space really looked like in one of our Sri Lanka case studies. So in Sri Lanka, we looked at 5 different fish markets in Negombo, actually, to really understand how different development processes, like Gayathri mentioned, that can also be considered like the Blue Revolution, globalization of value chains, how these actually impacted fish markets and how these processes were gendered. So one of the markets we looked at was the Pitipana market in Negombo. And we also have a few leaflets for everyone here if you all would like to kind of follow it. So the market really, this is what it looks like, right? So there are 3 areas currently, if we look at it from a space angle, that it can be divided into. So we have the first area, which is kind of behind the photo with the women, where we say, which is demarcated as A. And inside this, we have fish that are caught by the fishers in Negombo, that's sold. So these are usually fish from one-day boats and multi-day boats. And those are sold inside the market there. We then have the section C, which is showed on the photo on the right, where there's a lot of iced fish that is sold. So this fish usually comes from out of Negombo. This kind of section is almost operative 24/7. And then, interestingly, the women are kind of organized in this space in the corridor of this market. So if we kind of look at the space these women are selling, so this place is almost exclusively for women, where they sell usually low-value seafood from either traditional fishers in Negombo, which are the Kattudal and the Rualoru fishers, or one-day boat fishers. So they are usually found in this corridor here. So while this is kind of what the space looks like, and if you can think about it as gendered space, if you really look at it historically, women used to sell inside the markets. So even if we look at other literature, we see that most of the post-harvest activity in the west coast and the northwestern coast of Sri Lanka was done by women. So when we try to understand how these women who used to sell inside this market were pushed to these corridors, the first kind of description of this push is a masculinization of the market. So women and men both describe fish started, they say fish started to come from outside Negombo into our market space. So when these fish are usually bought by men sellers. So then the men in the family consider this space to be inappropriate for women. as men from outside the village now are interacting in these spaces that used to be exclusively for the women in the village. So there was kind of a pulling factor from the spouses, so who were usually the fisher. So usually what would happen is the fishers would bring the fish in, would bring the fish in from the sea, and the women would be the ones that go and sell it. So this masculinization of the market is one reason the women and men both explain for this kind of pushing out of the market. In addition, the fish that was bought was actually higher in value. So the women didn't have the capital or the networks or even the kind of social norm to now interact with these outside men to get access to this fish and sell. Along with this, so then the men started, kind of capitalizing on this opportunity, which then led to these women again being marginalized a little bit more. Along with this also, there was the mechanization that was taking place. So again, the fish that was brought in by multi-day boats are higher in value, and the women did have the issue when it came to the capital to really source this fish. So while there were these factors that were really pushing these women out of the market, we also, as Gayathri mentioned, there were also factors that were kind of pulling the women out. So these were things like the garment factory or like education, and also the fish market being described as inappropriate for young women. So even now, during the economic crisis, when Gayathri and I were in the field, so we were doing this work during COVID, and then before the economic crisis, and then during it as well. It was very interesting to see more young women, at least a few young women, because of the crisis really coming into the market. But this was their last resort, and everyone kind of also felt like it was inappropriate for them. It was not a safe space for them. So even in this photo, we can see that most of these women are they're quite old. So they're usually above 60 years of age, and they have been in the market for at least 40 years. So between 25 to 40 years, these women have been in these markets. So it's very rare that new people really come into these markets. And also we see the entry point for these women are usually their last resort, unless they've been selling for 40 years. So this is kind of an illustration, while we don't have a blue economy policy, how different kind of, global, regional and local forces can impact spaces and how they're gendered. So we can look at the layout of the market. We can look at the where the women are where they don't have a roof. So it's actually quite challenging for them. So as soon as the fishers from actually where I said that the ice fishes are sold, as soon as they kind of move out, at about 11 a.m., you see these women really moving to these areas of shade. So they kind of, when we really also then talk about resistance for these women, they almost acknowledge that resistance is not a choice, because they have to kind of move out because they feel like they don't really have power. But it's also interesting to see how they create their own spaces, and that they're not really like fully pushed out of these spaces. So this was one of the examples of how we see space being gendered in some of our case studies in Sri Lanka. I'm going to now let the rest of our speakers maybe come in and talk about any of their case studies, and if there was something that we've missed. Amal, Prabhakar, if there is something that you all would like to add, I'd like to welcome you all to do that before we go for a last round of questions.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhakar, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay, I wish to add a couple of points where how the policy makers have taken a new trend. For example, between Blue Revolution and now, Blue Economy. When you look at Blue Economy per se, with respect to the Indian scenario, fisheries would be one sector among the 8 sectors that it has identified. The kind of conflict that was in existence during the Blue Revolution between small scale and and the trawling sector, and the kind of the administration that came into existence after the struggle, where the initial 5 nautical miles are being reserved uh, as the traditional rights for small-scale fishers, uh, and how it has been violated even now in most of the coastal districts of Tamil Nadu. Within blue economy, the cultured fisheries on one side and deep sea fishing project on the other side are dominating the scene. When you look at cultured fisheries, no, it is not the same that was started in 1990s, where the indigenous species were cultured, and no, it was catering both to the international market and also to the local market. Whereas in the current scenario, Benami has been cultured largely, and we know the kind of the supply chain relation that is in existence, where we see this species is being imported, and they are patterned elsewhere, and brood stocks were brought in, and hatcheries are being promoted in the coastal districts. Um, and the kind of supply chain relation that has evolved over a period of time have revealed that uh, the traditional fishing caste groups are losing their control over fisheries gradually, and we see people with capital are being able to invest in these fisheries and able to reap benefits on one side, and also though cultured fisheries was promoted at one point of time as the solution to the kind of overfishing that is been happening in the sea and the oceans. So no, the kind of no, we haven't. No, when I look at to the literatures, we haven't given much importance into the kind of sustainability that this cultured fisheries would have, provided the kind of antibiotics that are being used, that too in waters, not on the species but on the waters, and the kind of impact that this antibiotics would have both on native species and also to various other species that are in existence around the farms. These are problems that we are facing at present, and which requires consistent scholarship, because antimicrobial resistance has been slowly increasing, and we all know India has been one of the hub for antibiotics manufacturing and distribution. And no, as Amalendu has explained or given kind of a brief outline about the feed industry, and there are larger players that are now dictating fisheries, and the traditional fishing caste groups are at the receiving end on one side, and also the kind of encroachment that we are seeing, where capital is being able to take it for granted the commons that are there in this particular geospace, and the kind of impact that it would have, especially the ecologically sensitive areas that are in the coastal regions, the kind of regulations that are in place. For example, no, at present in India, where the coastal space is being governed under coastal regulation zone notifications. These notifications are being diluted in the last, say, 20-30 years, primarily to increase or boost economy or bring in industries in this particular region, so that they could actually promote and industrialize the entire coast in some sense, and fishers are not able to have much say in it. Similarly, there is a set of civil societies that are working in Tamil Nadu at present, primarily focusing on protecting commons and also protecting the ecologically sensitive areas, which are very essential for the biodiversity of this particular region. And mapping this region hasn't been done yet, and the MSP, which is also a kind of a experimentation projects that are happening in two different states, one in Pondicherry and another one in Lakshadweep, where state is able to demarcate areas where they could promote industries both on the coast and also on the sea. Though they were able to invest on that, the kind of investment that they have done on marking the commons, especially the traditional commons that are in the hold of fishers, and also the coastal ecologically sensitive areas, has been abysmal over a period of time. So these are some of the important subjects that requires attention, and slowly scholarships are being emerging in areas of this nature. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Prabhakar, for that. And we have a question about the methodology that was used for the Sri Lankan case study. So actually the entry point was ruptures. So we were looking at how the economic crisis, COVID-19, port city, were really impacting 5 different marketplaces and how men and women were responding to it. So the gendered space was actually something that kind of unintentionally almost came up. We were asking questions about space. We were looking at space in the other countries. And actually, we had a few other researchers more specifically looking at the impact of like space and blue economy when it came to the coastline. So we were looking at like how dried fish processors and the in the tourism industry kind of there were like clashes there. So the way we really went about theorizing space was a little bit indirect. Gayathri, is there something that you'd like to add? No, right? Yeah. And now, Amal, is there something you'd like to add from the case studies? Yeah.
Nothing much to add to this. What I spoke, I think it was generally a reflection from the space in West Coast, particularly Karnataka, that we are working. And one interesting maybe point would be to say that there is a river called Saravati, which kind of which drains into Arabian Sea in this place called Honavar in Karnataka, and this river keeps changing, moving northward, and in last 20 years, it would have moved a few kilometers actually northward. So there has been a coastal erosion is happening and accretion is happening. There are 90 acres of one land mass that was accreted, and in that space, women were using this space for fish drying. There are about there are some big players were there, and there are about 2,000 plus women who are engaged in this fish drying and trading activities. So their livelihood was dependent on this particular space. Now, what happened is the state claimed that particular land and gave it to a private company called Honavar Port Private Limited. And this company now evicted the people who are engaged in this fish drying related activities. So what we saw basically was that the livelihood impact was much more significant among the women, because in most cases these are the women who have been engaged in fish drying and fish trading activities, both dried and fresh fish trading activities. So this what we saw was that it is just not the capital or the blue economy imagination that how the private capital can come into this space, but also what is the role of state in kind of promoting this and where it sides actually in this process was a question. And in this, the officials organized themselves. Women came together. Actually, the first part of the protest that started was with the women, and then the community came together and they got into the kind of a judicial process of going for a court case. But at the end, they didn't win this particular case. But then the case went to another space called a Green Tribunal, where because a particular approach road for the port infrastructure that was happening, this particular approach road was in a forest designated area, and which was used by local community to ferry their things, but not necessarily ready for big vehicles to come into that particular space. So that case went to Green Tribunal, but in that also this is still under kind of that kind of a jurisdiction process, but it was not necessarily against kind of creating a big port or big expansion of the port. And see, this problem, this one is happening in a particular land which is accredited. And I think that would be a kind of a specific case to add. And if we look at this blue economy document, like earlier we discussed, and out of curiosity, basically in some of our documents, including Kenya, India, in Sri Lanka, I used Control F to look at small scale fisher, look at women, and these terms, and even dried fish. If you will find that these terms are hardly used, almost negligibly used, and the recognition of women as fishers, that has not come into this blue economic discourse that is being presented in this document. Whereas you'll find terms like SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, is quite frequently being used. So what is the audience this blue economy reports are talking to? This itself says that. And the ground reality, when you go to specifically with the small scale fisher, with the women, you see the realities are different. And the blue economy document and the imagination that is being developed, it caters to a different kind of audience. And that is where the kind of our project generally also kind of reflected on those aspects, I would say. Thanks.
Thanks, Amal. I think on that note, I mean, who is the audience in these, blue economic policies? I think that's one of the last points that Amal was making. And I think that's a very pertinent question for us also in Sri Lanka, because we are now, obviously moving, whether we like it or not, it's coming. So how do we prepare ourselves, I guess, is the question for us. So on that note, I think we will conclude this session. This is the website. I think you can also, there is a QR code on the leaflet. You can also, use that to access the website. This website houses some of the work that we've been producing, some of the outputs, some of the social media posts that we've been producing the last few years. So before I conclude, I would like to thank first our colleagues, our speakers, and also for staying with us despite all the technical glitches that we've been facing. So thank you very much, Betty, Amal, Kyoko, and Prabhakar. I would also like to thank our audience, both this in-person audience here in Colombo, but also our friends, colleagues that stayed with us online. And who engage with us. I'm sorry if we did not respond to all the questions that you posted. We did try to, but also please feel free to get in touch with us if you have any, further questions. Finally, I would like to thank BCIS for giving us this opportunity and, for all the support provided. And thank you to CEPA colleagues who are also here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.